Good morning, friends. May 17th, and we continue in virtual worship this morning, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to bring you this YouTube video to worship by Zoom. Grateful for the talent of Monica's music ministry, for Sheila's messages, for our own ability to join in worship, for Spirit is everywhere. And this particular worship is actually dedicated to our graduates. We have a number of college graduates who are moving forward in their lives, even in the midst of the pandemic, and the rest of us who are also moving forward in our lives, perhaps graduating from a life that we thought we knew everything we were to do and we were to be, into a new world here in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic. The reading this morning is from Parker Palmer's Let Your Life Speak. We'll have a prepared message and then a meditation for you as you head off into your morning or after this worship. From Parker Palmer, Let Your Life Speak. The deepest vocation and the deepest vocational question is not, what ought I to do with my life? It is more elemental and demanding, who am I? What is my nature? Everything in the universe has a nature, which means limits as well as potentials. A truth well known by people who work daily with the things of the world. Making pottery, for example, involves more than telling the clay what to become. The clay presses back on the potter's hands, telling her what it can and cannot do, and if she fails to listen, the outcome will be both frail and ungainly. The human self also has a nature, limits as well as potentials. Our deepest calling is to grow into our authentic selfhood, whether or not it conforms to some image of who we ought to be. As we do so, we will not only find the joy that every human being seeks, we will also find our path on the authentic service in the world. True vocation joins self and service. As Frederick Buechner asserts when he defines vocation as the place where your deepest gladness meets the world's deep need. His definition starts with the self and moves towards the needs of the world. It begins wisely where vocation begins not in what the world needs, which is everything, but in the nature of the human self, in what brings the joy self, the deep joy of knowing that we are here on earth to be the gifts that God created. Quaker teacher Douglas Steere was fond of saying that the ancient human question, who am I, leads inevitably to the equally important question, whose am I? For there is no selfhood outside of relationship. We must ask the question of selfhood and answer it as honestly as we can, no matter where it takes us. Only as we do so may we discover the community of our lives. As I learn more about the true seed of self that was planted when I was born, I also learn about the ecosystem in which I was planted, the network of communal relations in which I am called to live responsively, accountably, joyfully, with beings of every sort. Only when I know both seed and system, self and community, can I embody the great commandment to love both my neighbor and myself. Bringing you the message this morning is touching me deeply, as I know we are living in the midst of this volatile and ambiguous time. And as we travel more deeply into another week of mindful living within the pandemic, First Friends is discerning how we are to be connected and caring during this volatile time. This will be discussed at our monthly meeting, May 17th, 12:30 p.m. by Zoom, and I hope you join us. This is a volatile time as we hear news every day that makes it clear just how exceedingly difficult it is to understand how to safely respond to the pressures put upon our society by COVID-19. And I'm grateful there are funny videos going around about deeply confusing situations that we face. Do we have the virus? Don't we have the virus? Perhaps it's both. Laughter helps us release the stress and tensions, and that's healthy. But I'll let you know I am terrified for your well-being. This is tremendously challenging, and there is great uncertainty regarding how to ensure everyone's well-being. Uncertainty about the economy and what will be happening for us in July, in September, and in the coming winter. This is a complex situation, a situation that we wish we had simple answers, but we don't. We are walking amid a great moral and physical concern with ambiguous and ever-changing answers. So we take one step forward, perhaps prepared to take one step backwards, if need be. We want to make sure meeting is equipped to be healthy and vital during this volatile, complex, and uncertain time. And most of us are volunteering or caring for the children in our families, working in jobs that you're able to participate in, or waiting to return to work. And these past 8 weeks of uncertainty have brought us to existential questions of identity or purpose. What do we do when we live with such great uncertainty? Last week, we heard the reading from Revelation 1. Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. If we allow ourselves to dwell with inner stillness, we have a better chance of hearing the living one. This week in our reading, we hear Parker Palmer share that we must listen to what our lives are asking us to be and do. And Parker worked very closely with friend Douglas Steer, who was fond of saying that the ancient human question, who am I, inevitably leads to the equally important question, whose am I? This eternal question is found across many faith traditions, and it is a question we hear from the mystics. Who is the self, the I am, that seeks to live and breathe in labor and in leisure in a beautiful, suffering world? As we encounter the big questions that are in front of us, the biggest hurdle to being the change we seek to be is the story we tell ourselves about the world, ourselves, and other people. When we think about the gospel stories, we might see that there are often small teachings about our very own condition, and they're as fresh today as they were 2,000 years ago. We're asked to cultivate patient endurance, to hang in there, as Wes mentioned last week, and he came to going deeper. He said, we are asked to adopt a holy stubbornness, to abide through the dark nights of the soul. If we can do this, if we are able to abide, to take time to pray and meditate, not to accomplish some feat of prayer marathon or to arrive at any objective measure of how we are to live in relationship with God or one another, but rather to steep, like tea, in abundant, abiding love. In the midst of your daily rounds these past months, how often have you noticed how precious you are, how loved you are by God's unwavering love for you, that yourself and God's self are one? This was the message that Jesus was teaching us. This is the invitation today. Early friends were intent on the revival of this basic understanding of Christ's manifestation in our lives. Friends were intent on what Doug Gwynn notes was a revival of primitive Christianity, as we allow ourselves to have a daily practice of silent, expectant waiting. We gain what is waiting for us. Through this prayer, we come to an awareness of Christ's presence as a guiding, teaching, and redeeming light in our hearts. Parker says that all forms of contemplation share the same goal, to help us see through the deceptions of the self, the little false self, and the deceptions of the world, its consumer, fear-based, armed to the teeth, unwilling to share, in order to get in touch with what Howard Thurman has called the sound of the genuine within us and around us. This genuine is the living self, the I am, not a distant God hovering on the edge of the heavens, though can be found there. God is right here, heart-centered and available to each and every one of us. While we all wish to return to face-to-face worship and in-person committee meetings, we know we must pause and discern, how do we ensure the physical safety and well-being of each and every person? How do we ensure we remain connected across distances that occur while we hold virtual worship and meetings? And how might we remain committed to our living testimonies? The past week, you were invited to join in a conversation of the testimony of simplicity, led by Margaret Rowlett and Emily McCollum. Know that when we sit in prayer and meditation, our Quaker testimonies allow us to be inwardly guided. They are the expression of our inward connection with our Creator. John Puncheon says, the source of our inspiration and the source of the wherewithal to let the light examine our lives, to show us where we fall short, to show us the way to God, to show us how to be, manifesting divine love for creation. And it also means our prophetic witness. Our Quaker lives are speaking. They are the outward ethical expression of the inward Christ, the mystery of faith we are coming to know, to surrender to, and so to follow. As we turn to expectant, waiting worship, take time to still your body and your mind. And as you sense the deepening of being, say inwardly, "Here I am." And here's a meditation for you this morning. Consider your sense of how you want to ensure the well-being of all. Notice your own recent actions. Notice the questions you are holding. Offer up your questions to your guide, our inward Christ. Let the truth arise in its own way. Thank your God, thank your guide for whatever comes. And after the rise of your meditation, after the rise of worship, take a moment and write down the notes of what arose for you.